Hey guys, and welcome. Today we're going to be building this 7x7 shed. I'm going to show you how we put this thing together, how we built the platform. We're going to show you all of the steps. So you may not need a platform with your shed. So if you feel free, down below there's going to be timestamps. Flip forward to any part of the video that you would like, or watch the video from front to end. Whatever you want to do, feel free. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button, hit that big thumbs up for me please, and also click the notification bell because you don't want to miss any future videos that we put out. We're all about home DIY and anything around the house. All right guys, we're going to start building the shed, so here we go. Let's bust into our stuff here and let's see that we got all the materials that we ordered. So it's nice about them here, so they just pop off right here. We ordered Quikrete. If you've never used Quikrete before, this is great. It's all mixed together. It's a pre-mixed concrete mix, so you don't have to add any type of other aggregate inside with the concrete itself. So it's all ready to go. All you do is add water and it will set up. It's the easiest stuff you can use. Quikrete. We got 3 50-pound bags. I don't know if we'll need all of those, but I think it's probably more than we'll need, but I thought it was better to have more than not enough. I ordered 13 2x6 boards and 3 4x4 posts. Let's count and make sure we got everything. Here I got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 2x6s and 1, 2, 3 4x4 posts. So far, so good. All right, let's get this lumber unloaded. I don't know how you are, but if you're like me, you really like to go into the store, whether it's Lowe's, Home Depot, or your local lumber yard, and actually pick out your lumber yourself. That way you can get some of the best boards, you know, good materials. You don't want anything that's warped or anything that's got a lot of knots in it or a lot of dings. I was a little bit nervous about ordering this whole load and having it delivered because I didn't get to pick out the lumber. But I have to tell you, I am thoroughly impressed with my local Lowe's store. They did a great job of picking out lumber. Of my 2x6 boards, they're all straight and true. As far as I can tell, very little as far as the edges being damaged. This top sheet of plywood is great. And where I was a little bit worried on the second sheet of plywood on the middle, I don't think it's going to be an issue at all. So I think we are good. You might be able to see right here was where my issue was, where this was the top sheet of plywood, and this is where they ran the band around the entire pallet of plywood. So it's kind of just compressed that edge, but that's all it is just on those two edges, and I think it's going to be fine. We'll actually flip that sheet of plywood over, and we'll use the good side, which is the back side. So what we have purchased here is the Craftsman 7x7 resin storage shed. It's 327 cubic feet. It's actually a pretty good amount of storage. When we get it put together, you're going to see that there's a good amount of room in there to put your items that you want to store in here. From everything I understand, from all the reviews that I have read, this thing is pretty watertight, and that's going to be important for us. It's also, from what I understand, fairly easy to put together. And so we're going to see how easy that is. We're going to put it to the test. We need to find the best location for our shed. There's not a whole lot of places that we really felt was a really good location for the shed. We looked at maybe putting it right next to the house, but there was a pretty good dip in the land right there that we were going to have to dig down even to put this type of platform. And we kind of looked at this area right here. We have a good amount of room between the trees. It's fairly flat as our land is right here. And it's a good proximity to our vehicles, which are just about 20 yards away. So when we need to move the scooter, which is the main reason for this shed, we'll just be able to drive it right up this little hill and right into the shed. So it should be pretty easy at all times. So we think this is a good location. So the next thing I got to do, and that is Zeus in the background squawking. The platform is going to actually be 7x8. I said I was going to make it a little bit different than what they have on the plans. The plans actually make it exactly to fit underneath the shed at 7x7. But we're going to make ours 7x8, so we have a foot extra on the front, so that we'll have a little step into the shed. So we need 7 foot by 7 foot, and we have a good amount of room between the trees here. So let's see here, 5, 6. this is 7 foot right here. So if we're gonna go between the trees, about this much. Let's see how far we're gonna come out. 7 feet. I think I'm gonna bring the back of the shed. I think I'm gonna bring the back of the shed back out of the yard a little bit. So I think I might put my first post approximately right here. So let me kind of get something, and I'm gonna mark this. I think I may go back about another 6 to 8 inches into the woods, and that'll get the shed a little bit more out of the yard to keep us as much yard space here as possible. There are times that we drive the cars up here when we have company, and so I want to keep as much room in our yard up here as possible. So, and now I start digging the first hole, and I'm going to get me a workout here, but these post hole diggers make pretty easy work of it. Guys, if you're going to be doing digging like this in the ground, I highly recommend a good pair of gloves. I actually just got these new pair of gloves. My other ones I'd had for many years, and they finally wore so many holes in them, I had to get new ones. I love these. They've been great. They're the Wells Lamont Hydra Hide, so they can get wet and they don't get all stiff once they get wet. And if you're out digging at all, you're gonna get your gloves wet because they're gonna sweat, all kinds of stuff. But guys, I don't know what the soil's like in area where you live, but where we live up here in the mountains of North Carolina, we have a lot of trees. And where I'm digging right here, I'm digging a little bit of dirt and a whole lot of roots. The only thing you can do is cut through them. It just takes a little time. But the reason that we have a lot more roots here, from what I understand, is that we live in the mountains, and in the mountains we have a lot of wind up here. I mean, especially in the winter time, we have a huge amount of wind. And all of these trees that you see around here, these guys are tall, and they will be swaying in the wind, and you will think, how in the world are those trees not falling over? Well, I had an old timer once tell me that these trees up here in the mountains, that they grow up in the wind. And as they're growing, they're swaying in the wind. And while they're swaying as they're growing up, they're digging deeper roots so that those roots will help them hold themselves up in the wind. And as they grow, they're getting more and more deep roots, more and more deep roots as they get higher. And that's why these trees are able to stand in the wind and grow, is because they've grown such a deep root system. So they have an even more deep root system than they will in other parts of the country where they don't have as much wind. So, lots of wind, lots of roots, lots of digging for me. When you're digging your hole, it's a little bit of a pro tip. Put down a tarp or some type of plastic or something that you can actually put your dirt on top of when you pull your dirt out. Then you can haul your dirt off, put it in another part of your yard, put it someplace that you don't need it, and that way you don't have a big mess in your yard to clean up. Guys, apparently either I'm stronger than I think I am, or we had a defective post hole digger here. You see the bracket broke here that holds this side together. So I'm still able to dig with them, but this is what's great about Lowe's tools. These Cobalt tools, ultimate strength, lifetime hassle-free guarantee. We'll take this guy back to Lowe's, they'll give us a brand new one. If it breaks, they'll give us another one, but I don't expect another one to break. These Cobalt tools are usually really good. I would imagine that probably just had a stress fracture coming from the factory, and so it broke right along that rivet line, like right there it looks like. So we'll get this back to Lowe's, they'll give us a brand new one, and we'll be back digging in no time. I'm going to start today by finishing the hole that I started yesterday when the post hole digger broke. However, when I took the post hole digger back to Lowe's, they were out of the post hole digger in stock. So I got my money back for it, and I'm gonna have to get it from another Lowe's. So didn't have time to do that today, so I figured we would start on the framing. Okay guys, so when you're marking your boards, you come to 93 inches, you want to mark a nice V right exactly at the 93 inches. That V will get you a nice exactly where that is, rather than if you make a tick line just like this, you can make it this way or this way and you never know exactly where that is. But if you make a V right at that point at 93 inches, you know exactly how far you are. Speed square. You really need one of these guys. They're not very expensive. You get that lined up there, get your pencil right on the line, just like that. Nice square line, perfect line to cut by. Just got this this Bauer 20 volt cordless framing saw. I love this little skill saw. I have only used it a few times, but I got a carbide tip blade. That's a really nice feature. I've now marked my board. I've marked it at 93 inches. 93 plus 3 inches is going to give me 96, because the reason I did that is because if you measure this, we are 1.5 inches. So 1.5 inches on either end makes 3 inches. So 3 inches from 96, 93. So now, just like that. As there are two ways I could put this deck together, the deck framing. I could actually use nails, and I do have a framing nailer, and I could do it that way. But I have chosen to go with using deck screws. Deck screws will hold it really, really well, and these will not rust in the weather. So we'll like that. It won't leave any rust lines or anything. What's great about these Hillman that I got from Lowe's, ordered these from Lowe's as well. They come. They're a star tip, so not a Phillips, not a flat, but a star tip. So you need a special bit for that, and you may not have that in your tool set, but they come with, each of these little boxes comes with its own little bit that fits them perfectly. So got my own little bit, but what's great about the star is you get really good grip on that. And when you've got a long screw like that going into wood, you need to have good grip on that head so it doesn't round it out. Round it out, you're going to have a hard time getting it in or out. So got those screws 3 inches long. That way they can go through a 2x4, which is 1.5 inches, and they'll still have 1.5 inches to grab on the inside. So it should be a really good tight joint, but it should be really structurally strong. So we're going to put this bit in our drill and we're going to get going on our framing. I've laid out my boards over here, my first 4, which are going to be the outside boards of the frame, and I'm going to put those together and we're going to square up the frame and go from there. This is the Bauer cordless drill. I got this a little over a year ago, and my DeWalt drill, which I'd had for several years and had loved, the batteries finally died and they would not charge. And I had to decide, am I going to spend the money and get a DeWalt drill, or do I want to get something a little bit different? So I went to Harbor Freight to see what they had. Generally, I've not been impressed with Harbor Freight tools, but they have this new line called Bauer that I found, and I thought, I'm going to just try it out and see how it works. For the price, if it doesn't work, I have not lost a huge amount of money, but let me tell you, this Bauer drill, I have been super impressed with it. I've used it for a year now. The battery holds charge really well. It's got good power, good torque. I just can't say enough about it. The only thing I wish is that it was a brushless drill and not a brush drill. Now they're coming out with a bunch more brushless options now, and I will be upgrading to brushless Bauers in the future, I believe, because I think this one has proven, and as happy as I've been with my brand new saw that I just got, I think I'm going to stick with the Bauer line at least for a little while and try to see how well that they do. So guys, what I'm doing here is I'm presetting my screws in the ends of this board, because that'll be easier than trying to hold the board up vertically and trying to screw into the end. So if you'll preset your screws, the board will hold the screw for you. So now I've just got to align the edges of my board, and as you can see, I'm having to hold this up. So what I'm going to do is get another board, one of my scraps, and put it underneath here. That'll hold that up in place and kind of be a second hand for me. So I'm going to go over here and get one of my scraps. This will do. And just like that, it's going to hold my board right in in place. Perfect. Now it's pretty important that you try to get this as level as possible. Try to get your corners, your boards to line up as close as you can. The closer you get your boards to line up, the better finished product you're going to have. And now that I have the outer part of our framing put together, I'm going to concentrate on the 5 inner pieces of framing, the long pieces there, and I'm going to use our same 3-inch decking screws. All right, we have another major step finished here. We have the major part of our framing done. We're squared up. We have all of our long boards in, front and back. We are 8 foot from back to front, and then we're the exact width of the shed from side to side. So we'll have a little bit extra out here in the front as a little step. So now my next step, what's going to be, there's some bracing that goes in these sides right here, and I'm going to have at least one brace right here in the middle where my pieces of plywood are going to meet. So one piece of plywood will go here, one will go here. Okay, it's time to get the side bracing cut now, and so what I did was I cut the first one, and then I used that first one to mark all the rest of them. That kind of saves me a lot of time in measuring and marking. And then I'm going to get them all cut and take them all over to my framing before I install any of them. Okay, I'm getting my measurements marked out here, and now I'm starting to install all of the framing. I'm going to use the same screws that we used before when we put the long part of our decking together, and then now I'm going to get them all completely finished. Now I'm going to move my framing over on the back 2 posts, and I'm going to get everything level and ready for the next step. As you can see, we have all of the framing is completely done now. All of our long boards are in. We're squared up. We have all of our bracing along the sides done. Everything is screwed in place. My back 2 holes are dug to the depth, and then I have temporarily affixed them, and I have leveled the platform here on our ground. The way our ground sits, the actual highest point of the ground is this corner right here. And so I'm leveling everything off of this corner, and our platform will actually touch the ground right here, and then we'll level out from there. And so right now our platform is sitting level. It's also sitting square. I've measured from corner to corner, and we are square. So now I know where to locate my front 2 posts since we are square, and I'm going to use these wooden stakes to drive right in the middle of where my 4x4 posts should be. So if I go right in this corner, right here in the middle, we'll drive this stake into the ground, and that marks where my post is going to be. And I will do the same thing in this corner, mark right in the middle of where my post is going to be. Now you'll notice that I'm off of the frame here because my post is going to sit right there in the middle, and if I put my stake right here on the edge, my post will be off center. So my stake will be right in the middle of where my hole should be. So that marks exactly where my front 2 holes should be. So now I will undo my back 2 posts, move my frame backwards a little bit, dig my front 2 holes, and we'll be ready to set the front 2 posts. We have reached another major stage on our platform here. As you can see, I've been working a little bit, kind of sweaty. I've got my front 2 holes dug, so all 4 posts are set. They are connected to our framing. Our framing is level at this point, so we are ready to actually set our posts in the ground. So we're going to set our posts in the ground using a Quikrete pre-mixed concrete mix, and then some of the dirt back from the holes themselves. Now we're going to use Quikrete, and I'm going to start on this back hole back here. Okay, I've got the Quikrete in my back post, so now I'm measuring from corner to corner both ways to make sure that my measurements equal. They do equal here, so my platform is square. So now I can put Quikrete in the rest of my 3 posts. Now when you're filling up your Quikrete, fill up your holes about 2/3 of the way full, and then make sure that you pack that Quikrete in there as hard as you can. Just keep packing it, get it all the way around the post. Use the front of your shovel, use the back of your shovel, and then put water over top of it. You can just put as much water as you want in there, get the water to soak down into the Quikrete, and then after you got the water on top of there, go ahead and fill your hole up with the rest of your filled dirt until it's to the top of the hole, and then just pack it down real good. The next step is going to be to put the decking actually on our deck. So I've got to go over and I've got to measure, get my measurements for my deck, and then we're going to come back to our decking boards here and get them cut. So I'm going to go over there and get a measurement, and I'll be right back. Okay guys, my measurement is 84.5. Length of my plywood is 96, so I got to cut a little bit of it off. We're going to measure here, and I'm going to mark 84.5. On my plywood. And it's important that you get your tape measure straight, because if your tape measure is crooked, your measurements will not be accurate. But I marked my 84.5 on this side. I'm going to mark my 84.5 on this side. Then all I have to do is draw a straight line between the two. Now you got several ways you can draw a straight line. If you've got anything, any type of a straight board, whether you've got a level, whether you've got anything, I've got a 2x4 here. This will work. I can line that right up, draw my straight line with that, or I have a chalk line. This is my preferred method, and the reason being is because this board is not sitting completely flat. It's been sitting out here, it's gotten a little rain, it's not completely flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line my chalk line up on this end over here, right on my mark. As long as it's lined up on that mark, I pull it straight, line it up on my mark over here, pull it tight, give it a little snap, and I've got me a perfect line that I can go off of. And it didn't matter that because that board was a little bit warped, that chalk line conformed right to it. So now we'll cut this off with our saw. All right guys, you'll notice on any skill saw, this is just a little small cordless skill saw, there are a couple of notches here in the front. There's a notch here and it's got a 0 marked on it and a line. Now that is kind of a forward guideline to where your blade is going to line up, because you need to see a little bit forward where you're going to be so that you kind of hit your mark straight. So I'll line that little notch up with my chalk line, and when my blade hits the board here, then I'll know that I'm going to come into the board right at the right spot. Here's an important thing. My blade depth right now is set deep because I was cutting 4x4 boards, but I'm going to actually set my blade more shallow, so because there's no reason to set it that deep when I'm cutting a board this thin. So important, take my power source off so I don't accidentally turn my saw on. I'm going to loosen my guard, and then I'm going to set my depth of my blade to just thicker than my material. Keep it down nice and tight. Put my battery back in, and now we are good to go. Hey guys, our next step here is we're gonna screw down our deck with the same decking screws that we used for the framing. And I want to mark my decking because I want to make sure that my screws hit the framing of the deck. But out here in the middle, I can't tell exactly where that framing is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the center line of every piece of framing here. And then I'll take a measurement from the end. That one's at 14 on center. So now I can come up here at 14, make another mark, and I can make marks all the way down so that I have a guideline of where my screws need to go. I'm going to put screws approximately every 12 to 14 inches around the edges. And then I could probably put them every 16 inches in the center. You don't need quite as many in the center, but we want to hold down our edges really well. So it doesn't have to be exactly accurate. Just want to get, and I'm checking to make sure that they're flush on the top there. I'm actually going to sink that one a tiny bit more. I don't want them to hang up on the flooring of our shed. You know, there's a really important rule when you're building anything. Measure twice, cut once. Make sure, even if you remember, I'm pretty sure this is 84.5, but I'm gonna measure and just make sure, because if I were to cut it 82.5, you can cut more wood off, but you can't ever put any back on. It is 84.5. So I'll cut my other piece, 84.5, and we'll bring it back over here. Notice that my wood here in the center is bowed up. So normally I would just kind of go around the edge of my plywood and then come back into my centers. But in this case, I'm actually going to go across the center of the plywood here and nail down from this side and nail down that way, because if I nail down that side, it's going to nail down the plywood a little bit short on that end, just a tiny bit. So these decking screws that I'm using here are specially designed for outdoor decking, and that's what we're using them for. They won't rust. Actually, I got a color to kind of match the wood, which is kind of nice. But one thing that's special about these is, I don't know if you can see the tip here. If you can see that, it actually has a notch out of the screw. So it acts like a drill bit as it's going in. So it actually drills into the wood even more than it would just with the threads of the screw. So it makes it kind of bite into the wood really easily. These are great screws. I definitely would recommend them. That is the first major step of our project complete. We now have our decking on, framing's completely done. It's nice, solid, sturdy. Do a little jig. This is gonna be great. We're gonna have a little bit of a front step here before we get into our shed, and then our shed will go from about here back and take up the rest of the deck. So our next step will be getting all the pieces out of our box for our shed, getting them all laid out, and then we'll start putting it together. All right, so I got into the box here after a little ripping and tearing. Just kind of muscled my way into it. First thing I found were the instructions. So first thing you always want to find is the instructions, and then you throw those away. Oh, just kidding. Oh, you definitely don't want to throw the instructions away. All right, we're gonna go in here. Looks like we need to get some tools here. So I'm gonna go compile all the stuff I need here, and then I'll be back with you. So we're getting all our parts laid out here. This is one of the roof panels. Everything looks like it's built really nicely. On top of the other one there. I'm gonna assume this box has all of our hardware. That's what it sounds like it has in it. So I'm just gonna lay it aside for right now. I'll get all the other pieces out. So I've got this larger panel here that I just pulled out of the box, and it's kind of bendy in the middle. The reason it's bendy in the middle is because these panels are all marked right here, molded in. You can see here, back right corner. So this is gonna bend around and go around your corners. So that way you don't have any, that's nice. You won't have any seam right there on that corner. No place for it to leak. It'll be a perfect corner, marked up, so you know exactly which way it goes up and down. So far, I'm impressed with this kit. And I believe that these little holes right here are for skylights. It actually has some skylights in it. Let a little bit of light into the shed. That's a nice little feature. So still left in the box here, we have our, looks like our 2 floor panels and our 2 roof end panels. Notice on the floor panel here, it's got the word Craftsman right across the front here. Got some, what looks like possible tread kind of in here, wood grain built in. I'm gonna run these up and I'm gonna set the actual floor on the platform, the 2 pieces of floor on the platform, because we know that's where we're gonna go down first. There. And this one is marked rear floor. So we know this is going to go into the back. Oh, it's got the end pieces here. You can see a little bit of venting in there so that you have some airflow going through the shed. That's a great feature. So our next step here, we've got to prepare our windows in our door frames here. So they provide a seal. The seal is put together here. It's got the adhesive backing on it and it is stuck together. So you kind of have to get it started. And so you can either use a pair of scissors, or I'm using my pocket knife just to get it started, and then it will just peel apart like that until we have 2 seals, 1 for each door. So I'll set one off with the other door over there. And then the seal just has an adhesive backing on here. And then there's a groove on the door. You guys can see that. The seal just fits right down in the door. The plexiglass will go right over that, and we'll screw that plexiglass to affix it to the door, and that will seal the rain out of our little shed here. I'm just peeling the backing back. I didn't do all of the unbacking to start with. That way it wouldn't stick where I didn't want it to. I'm gonna go around my corner here. I'm trying to do as neat of a job as I can. There will be a little bit extra. So you just bring your gasket all the way around to where it meets, and then we will just cut that gasket right where it ends up. That should give us a nice seal all the way around. So they packaged our windows between the cardboard, and it looks like that they are wrapped up in here to protect them really nicely. So we will unwrap our windows on the end of where they're wrapped up. There we go. Window for here, a little bit better. Okay, then we just attach this window using these pan head screws that they provided. If you're going to use a power tool like I'm using here to put these pan head screws in, it makes your job easier, but make sure that you go slow. If you go too fast, you'll put the screw in there too hard and it will actually strip out, because you're just putting the screw into this plastic or this resin. You're not putting it into any type of metal thread or anything like that. All right, the next step on here, after we've got our windows attached, we've got to attach these little latches. And what these will do, they're just a little slide latch. They'll attach here on the top of the door and the bottom of the door. And then once these are attached, they'll slide up into the door and it'll actually lock this door into place. So I'm gonna attach these, or use these little bit longer screws, 4 on each latch. And there are indentations in the door which show you exactly where to locate them. All right, our next step here is to put our truss assembly together. And so I've already started putting this assembly together here. It just has this centerpiece, and you basically just bolt. There's one hole at the top of this piece, one hole at the top of this piece, bolt, nylock nut so it doesn't come back loose. It has a little nylon inside of the nut there. So I'm just using a 7/16 socket on one side and just a little crescent wrench on the other side to hold the nut. And we will just tighten it down all the way until she's tight on both sides, and then we will put our next braces in. So the next part of our pre-truss assembly here is to put the horizontal braces in. I've already put in one on the other side. They use the longer bolts and the same nylock nut on the other side here. So I'll put this truss part goes on this side here. It's right on the bolt. Nylock nut on the top, and it will just bolt in. Tighten down both sides, and then we'll move to our next step. Okay, the last step in our pre-truss assembly here are to put the vertical legs, I'm going to call them, that go straight down into the actual shed here. And I've already put one on there. They use the same long bolts. There's just a hole in the end here, and just 2 tabs at the hole, so just bolt down through. Same procedure as before, and once we get this on, I believe it'll be ready to go actually onto our shed. So they packaged all the hardware very nicely together here, and everything is labeled. We have our bolts that actually connect the panels together, along with the bolt tool, which is, these are what I was looking for. The way these panels go together is we use these bolts right here, these plastic bolts, okay? And you can see they go right here in these holes. Then it'll go through the hole. Come around to this other side. It goes through the hole right here, and then it will be, the other panel will snap in right here, and this will screw together, holding the 2 panels together. So that's what we're going to do right now. So I'm bringing my second panel over, and the panel goes down into the floor, and it clicks into some notches and then pushes over and locks into that first panel, as I said before. Now, this is where a rubber mallet would actually come in handy, and then you screw your panels together. Then you just work your way all around the shed putting up your wall panels. Just take your time and you'll make it through this step pretty easy. And then the front cap and the back cap go on. Okay, so I've placed our truss assembly here, and it just slips down into grooves in the sides of both of the walls, and then our main beam across the top of the shed just slides in either in and underneath our truss assembly. Then on either end we just have one bolt that goes through, same bolt that we used on the truss assembly there. So you just tighten your bolts on either end, and then we move on to the next step. All right, guys, a great feature of this shed is that it actually comes with skylights. There are 4 roof panels, and so there are 4 skylights. So they're not clear, they're opaque, but they let just enough light in, so they just go in kind of like this. Each skylight has a seal. So first of all, you have to break your seals apart because they come in a package of 2 skylights. So it's similar to what we did with our sealing of the windows on the front door. Work our seal apart. Then the seal actually goes into the little groove in the edge of the skylight here. We'll go all the way around the groove. And just like the other, it's a little bit long, so we will cut it off. seal around our skylight here. Okay, so now and then we just get, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 screws all the way around that to hold the skylight in. We're going to do that 4 times on all 4 roof panels. Getting ready to put our roof panels on, I believe. So we've got to attach our main roof panel to our roof cap, and they have roof panel M to rear roof peak W, and then we're going to have another roof panel M that'll be our front, that'll attach to our front roof peak. And there are 5 connecting points here, and they attach with our same screws that we've been attaching with, and so they just attach like that and all the way down. So this next part, if you have somebody to help you, it's a little bit easier to put these on with a second person. I was able to get the first one on by myself, so I'm going to attempt to put the second one on by myself as well. These little slots that are right here on the end, there are 6 of them. And what will happen is, let me turn this around, is these are going to go into the back. And I'm going to slide these down on that back end. The large part will slide in, the whole roof panel will slide down, and it will lock into the smaller part. It locks in the smaller part, the roof panel can't come off. So it's pretty easy. It will lock down in, and then the other roof cap is going to come over top of this, and everything's going to lock together. So my next panel to go up. So I'm installing that second panel, followed by the last 2 panels as it's getting dark here. As I said, that is a job probably for 2 people. Now I'm inside, and there's a lot of bracing that goes on the inside that you screw in. Then the next step is to actually install the doors, and I'm sorry I didn't get video of the door hardware installation, but follow the directions and you'll make it just fine. And that is the Craftsman 7x7 shed. Take your time, follow the directions, and you'll have no problem putting this thing together. All right, stay tuned. More videos around Big Al's place coming up. Until next time, we'll see ya. Okay. And that was the Craftsman. Today we're going to walk through a new building project that we've got, and I'm going to start over. What's nice about this storage shed is that it comes in a fully, let me start over because I just messed that completely up. All right, guys, no.
Oh crap. Are you okay?